For 5 consecutive years from 2014 to 2018, the government issued 5 resolutions with the number 19 on improving the business environment and national competitiveness. The implementation of these resolutions has helped Vietnam move up 30 places on the Doing Business ranking from the 99th at the end of 2013 to the 69th ranking at the end of 2018. However, in the ASEAN region alone, Vietnam has not yet achieved its goal of being in the top 4 countries with the best business environment. Vietnam is still behind Singapore, ranked number 2nd, Malaysia ranked number 15th, Thailand ranked number 27th, and Brunei ranked number 55th. In 13 World Bank Doing Business reports from 2009 to 2020, Vietnam has 33 recorded reforms. In particular, the 2 years with the highest number of reforms are 2016 and 2018, with 5 reforms each year.
Improving business environment and national competitiveness is a core policy priority of the Vietnamese government in 2019. This has great importance because many nations are racing to attract investment through fostering the quality of their business conditions. In this edition of BizLine, we would like to dedicate our program to reviewing what has been done in terms of business environment reforms in Vietnam, how effective is the implementation of this reform, and discuss the projection of the development of business sector in Vietnam in 2019. To help us have a better understanding of the topic, we invited to our studio today economist Dr. Lê Duy Bình, Managing Director of Economica Vietnam. Economica Vietnam contributed to the National Administrative Reform Project under the cooperation partnership between the Advisory Council and the Special Task Force of the Government Office on Administrative Reforms and the International Finance Corporation. Thank you so much for joining our program.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us here. Thank you.
First of all, we just watched a clip capturing the highlights in the business environment of Vietnam. What are the major achievements?
The resolution number 2 in 2019. And it is the first time that the resolution that was introduced right at the beginning of the year. And it is just after a very important resolution on economic developments of the countries. It's very important the achievement here that is the resolution has been translated into actions at a different level, at the national level and at the provincial level.
As you've mentioned right from the beginning of 2019, resolution number 2 on continued reform of national business environment was issued. What is your comment on the implementation of this resolution in relevant ministries, provinces and stakeholders?
So right after the issuance of the resolution at the beginning of the year, the government already make a very strong push to all the ministries, to all the provinces in the implementation of this resolution. We see that there has been a lot of new reforms being made by the ministries. For example, like in introducing new regulations to cut the compliance costs for the business, to reduce the cost burden for the business community. We can see the reforms are taken by the Ministry of Finance in the tax payment areas. We can see the reforms being taken by the Ministry of Labour in terms of social insurance procedures. We can also see the reforms being taken by the Ministry of Industry and Trade in relation to specialized inspections procedure applicable to the business community. And at the provincial level, we can also see many procedures in accessing to electricity being taken, like in some provinces, like in Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, also some of the provinces. But we also see that many of the ministries are not implementing the reforms at the pace and at the rhythm that is expected by the business community and by the government. Some provinces are also slow in introducing reforms, in implementing reforms. So the implementation is there. But the pace of reforms, the pace of implementation are different from one ministry to another and from one province to another. So we expect that in the years to come, this implementation could be quickened up would be accelerated in all the ministries and in all of the provinces.
So what is the attributed result to the efforts of Vietnam in implementing this resolution?
2019, we saw a lot of good achievements in Vietnam. First, we see that in the World Bank doing business, we score higher. We got a score high in terms of doing business. That is an indicator to measure the ease of doing business in Vietnam. And many of the reforms are recognized by the World Bank, for example, like in paying tax procedure and also in accessing to credit. These are the two major reforms that was recognized by the World Bank. In addition to that, we also see the achievements and the improvement in such areas like starting up a business. But we didn't get a higher ranking in the World Bank doing business. And also in the World Economic Forum, the National Competitiveness Index. And that is where we achieved the most progress. We jumped by 10 ranks this year. So this is a major achievement. So Vietnam was one of the top reformers in the world and have the highest improvement in terms of ranking under the National Competitiveness Index by the World Economic Forum. And domestically, we also see that there is a lot of credit given by the business community. For example, like the Eurocharm, in the business sentiment by the Eurocharm, we also see that the business sentiment indicator by European business in Vietnam also have a higher ranking for Vietnam in terms of business environment in 2019. And it is the fourth year that we also achieved this credit from the business community. VCCI, that is business community, also through VCCI also attributed high results through this reform to higher ranking to the perception of business environment in Vietnam.
So how does this improvement in the ranking of the World Bank report affect the image of Vietnam as a place for doing business in the eyes of foreign investors?
If you look at these indicators, you see that it's highly likely that we will achieve the target of $30 billion in terms of attracting investment into Vietnam in 2019. And until the first 10 months, we already achieved the figures of 29 billion. So that is really an indicator showing that foreign investor is really vote for Vietnam, vote for Vietnam as a top destination of investment by the actions, by committing more investment into Vietnam, by disbursing more money into Vietnam, and by having more investment projects in Vietnam. So also according to some of the survey by CoCham or by US News, and also by JICA or by ZECHO, all showing that Vietnam is still one of the top destination in ASEAN for investment and for foreign investment and for indirect investment as well. So all these things we can see that it can be attributed to these reforms by the government, because these reforms, it does not only benefit the domestic business, but it also benefits the foreign investors alike. So for these reasons that it is sending that the message to the world that Vietnam is one of the top destinations for investment.
After only 6 months of opening an office in Vietnam, Ms. Amy Phan, head of Commercial Representative Office of Rheinland-Pfalz State, Germany, shared that her office has successfully connected wine producers in Germany with Vietnamese enterprises to bring German wine products to the Vietnamese market.
Thế mạnh của Rheinland-Pfalz ở bên Đức thì thật ra là về ngành nghề y tế và dược phẩm và công nghệ ô tô và cũng như là công nghệ nhân tạo. Thì vào những cái công nghệ đó thì tất nhiên là Rheinland-Pfalz cũng đang rất là muốn đầu tư vào Việt Nam và tìm những cái doanh nghiệp để mà hợp tác.
According to a survey conducted by the delegate of the German Industry and Commerce in Vietnam, 77% of German businesses in Vietnam believed that their businesses are getting better. 21% believed their businesses are stable, and only 2% faced a downward trend. Meanwhile, these figures for other ASEAN countries are 61%, 35%, and 4% respectively.
Also zweifellos, also die positive wirtschaftliche Entwicklung von Vietnam hat massiv dazu beigetragen, dass Vietnam weiter attraktiv bleibt für ausländische Investitionen. Aber ich würde sagen, das ist nicht der alleinige Faktor. Es gibt weitere Faktoren, wie die Zugehörigkeit zu verschiedenen Freihandelsabkommen wie die ASEAN Economic Community, TPP 11 und jetzt auch das unterschriebene Freihandelsabkommen mit der Europäischen Union.
So German companies are mostly delivering machinery and parts, chemicals and electronics to Vietnam. So this is good, that goods that Vietnamese companies can use to produce goods. Yeah? And then the other way around, Vietnamese companies are largely supplying finished electronics.
Currently, there are over 380 German enterprises investing in Vietnam. The confidence of German businesses in terms of development prospects in Vietnam partly reflects efforts of the Vietnamese government to support German and foreign investors and enterprises doing business in Vietnam.
What are the significant improvements in terms of business environment we have witnessed within this year?
Number one, we see that the business environment is becoming more transparent. Of course, it is still far from perfect. We see that, for example, like in BCCI survey, that the business community is seeing that the informant charge, that is an euphemism for corruption in Vietnam, has been reduced. So for this, we see that there's the transparency of the business environment is being improved, and the cost for doing business in Vietnam is being reduced. For example, like through the national public service portal, that is one of the initiatives that was released by the government just a few weeks ago, and it is expected that it can reduce the cost of doing business in Vietnam by $180 million in a year, in year one.
Now, what's your comment on the business reaction to the government efforts in improving the business environment?
The business welcome all the reforms made by the government, and but they also point out where the government can reform further. The business community saying that, as I mentioned earlier, that the combat against corruption to reduce informant charge is being really taken seriously by the government. And the government is very serious in making the business services administrative reforms be more efficient, to be more effective, and that is also very much welcomed by the business community through the PCI survey. And they also see that accessing to some kind of services that should be offered by the government, infrastructure is also being improved. Also, like telecommunication is also being improved. Public service is also improved. But the business community also sees that, as I mentioned, that the pace of reform are not the same in all ministries. Some of the reform areas have not been touched. For example, like a bankruptcy procedure have not been touched by, not touched at all, or registering business. There's no reforms made in recent years at all. So this is something that the business community is expecting that this can be quickened up in the years to come. And especially that we think that through this PCI survey and also VCCI and also some of the Eurocharm or AmCharm sentiment, that the pace of reform in Vietnam has been slowing down in the last 2 years. That is something that the business community expect that the pace of reform, the rhythm of the reform should be regained as it used to be like 3 or 4 years ago.
What can you say about the number of new businesses set up as proof of positive sentiment of businesses to the government economic reform efforts?
That is what we call the immediate fruit that we can harvest from this reform. We can see that last year, for them, like the previous year, we have about 126,000 new businesses being set up across the country. And that is really an impressive figure comparing to some countries in the regions. And this 126,000 new business in 2019, they have already pumped or put about 36 billion US dollars into the economy. So it far exceeded the amount of FDI investment into the economy. So this resources is very important for Vietnam at this moment when we see that ODA is going down and state investment is also going is stable. So these resources would be very important to fuel the Vietnamese economy in the years to come. And of course, it again shows the importance of the private sector in Vietnam, that the private sector in Vietnam would continue to be a pillar of or to be an important engine of the economy in the coming years. This private sector enterprise, the new number of business also created about 1.1 million new jobs for the economy. And that is very important in terms of job creation, in terms of social insurance coverage, in terms of achieving social progress for the country, and in the end, that would be the prosperity of the country and the escape from the middle income trap of the country in the years to come.
According to the recent World Business Environment Survey of the World Bank, taxes are the field that Vietnam has improved the most in recent years. The average number of tax payment hours per year has been saved by 1/5 compared to before. The percentage of enterprises that declare e-tax is 98.4%.
Phần lớn các doanh nghiệp thì lúc đầu còn ái ngại, nhưng sau khi tìm hiểu thì thấy rằng là cái nộp thuế điện tử là một cái vấn đề mà rất thuận lợi cho doanh nghiệp.
Following taxes, the areas with the most reform are credit access, business registration, and access to electricity. On the other hand, the two areas with almost no reforms over the past 13 years are land registration and bankrupt business resolution. Some localities have not been proactive or determined to improve.
Từ kinh nghiệm của chúng tôi thì thấy rằng là lĩnh vực nào mà có sự chủ động tích cực của các doanh nghiệp trong ngành, có sự phản hồi tương tác tốt thì lĩnh vực đấy thay đổi một cách tích cực.
According to a Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry representative, with its efforts from 2014 to 2018, Vietnam's position regarding competitiveness increased to 30 levels. However, it is still at the average level of the world.
Well, we've seen that the domestic sector does benefit from the government efforts in improving the business environment, as you've just mentioned. What about the FDI sector? Do FDI enterprises benefit from administrative procedures reform as well?
The FDI do benefit from this process, and regulatory reforms in Vietnam also open up a new investment channel for FDI in Vietnam. For them now, you can see that many of the FDI, it is much more easier for them to buy shares in Vietnamese economy, and that is why amongst the 30 billion US dollar being invested in Vietnam this year, 1/3 is in the form of foreign investor buying shares in Vietnamese economy. So this kind of new investment is open up for foreign investors. And also that there is new wave of business starting up with the sandbox policy that is being introduced by the government. And then FDI, foreign investor, is now investing into this startup business through the venture fund, and it is estimated that this is going up a lot in the coming years. It is happening already.
Now, looking forward, what can we say about the remaining challenges that need to be overcome for Vietnam to do better in 2020?
Doing business in Vietnam is being improved, but it is still challenging for many of the business. 49% of the business still have to deal with some kind of informal charge, some kind of corruption. That is something that we need to improve in the coming years. And also the business community have to face with the new competition with the trade tensions, and also the new trade agreement for the CTPP or the EVFTA and this new challenger for Vietnam as well, in addition to the opportunity that it brings about. But the challenger, that means that Vietnam has to face up with the competitor, the SME, the big business coming from Europe, coming from Canada, from Chile, from many other parts of the world. And we can see it next year already. For them in agriculture products, Vietnamese agriculture business have to face up immediately with many of the products that is being produced in Europe, with the wine and also with all this beef, and we can see that immediately. And also the Vietnamese company have to be up to a higher standard. For example, if we want to export to CTPP countries, and for example, like the textile industry, they have to be up to higher standard in terms of environment, in terms of labor standard, and all this have to push that Vietnamese company have to invest more.
What are your recommendations for different stakeholders in this economic administrative reform process in Vietnam?
I think that we should really step up with the reforms that we have been, that is the good work that we have been doing. The business community also expected to have more the bolder reforms from the government. That the reforms in areas that has not been touched before, for example, like in bankruptcies procedures, it has not been touched at all in the last few years. Or registering property, it has not been touched at all either.
Do you have anything else you would like to add?
Only one final thing is that 2020 is a very important year for Vietnam. You know that we would have a new strategy, we would have new plan for the economy for the coming years. We would for that, administrative reform, economic governance, and also administrative reforms should also be one of the pillars in this strategy, in this social and economic development plan that would be submitted to the Communist Party and also to the government. So it should be one of the key pillars. So if we can make further reforms and it can be favorable for business community, and that could be very important for Vietnam achieving the visions for 2035, and also in achieving, in escaping the middle income trap.
Vietnam is targeting to be among ASEAN 4 with the best business environment by 2020. Vietnam is still on its journey to achieve that goal. Through our discussion today with economist Lê Duy Bình, we've understood the big picture of the business administrative reform in Vietnam carried out through Resolution 19 and further pushed by Resolution number 2. With this momentum already achieved and an understanding of what needs to be improved, hopefully we can achieve this goal. And that has wrapped up this edition of BizLine. Feel free to log on to our website at vtv4.vtv.vn and youtube.com/VTV4Go, or simply download our app VTV Go for more news and entertainment. Goodbye for now, and thanks for tuning in.